So let's kick off. So generally in these situations, as you've seen now, you'll see other people jumping on board that were not there before. But I think judging from the group is still small. I think I kind of know who's seen what. So the introductory slides I'm going to fly through. I'm just going to continuously highlight and continuously refresh your minds in terms of what's what's really core for me in terms of what I'm trying to do. You guys are our future leaders, and the choices that you make now are going to have a massive impact onto the choices that or the outcomes as into the future. And therefore, it is really sort of my privilege to be talking to you to try and help you develop better choices. You're all living in South Africa. You're all understanding what's going on with Eskom. People can make all the excuses in the world and explain 1,000 things to you, but bottom line, you're living in an environment where our politicians did not make the right choices, and therefore these are the consequences. And by the way, load shedding started, I was just remembering, in 2009, right? So some of you were little kids in 2009, and we're still having it up until this day. So it's essential that people make better choices, and that they really are the kind of people who want, you become the kind of people who want to perform at the highest level. And you also want to have certain personal senses of excellence. When you look at yourself, you're proud of yourself, you're, in terms of what it is that you're doing and what it is that you're trying to achieve. And that you're actually playing a vital role in developing our communities. That's really, for those of you who've already had the introduction, this in terms of where we go, so I'll skip past that. And then the other thing, of course, that you'll hear me speak on consistently is this thing called inspiration. Inspiration is essential. As leaders, your responsibility, not only to your communities around you, to your families, etc., is to be an inspiration to them, so that people can look up to you, little kids, can look up to you and say, wow, one day I just want to be a little bit like you. And then you can go out and effect positive change for the future. My 6-year-old here, my daughter, she's actually ultimately going to end up relying on you as the leaders of tomorrow. And then it's about making better choices. So that's really the construct of value add that you all know about. We are in session 2 of preparation. When we come out of this session of preparation, we're going to go to choices. Choices is going to also have 2 sessions, and then we're going to go to dream the plan, and then we're going to go to plan the dream. And these, you'll see how they link into each other. By the way, these sessions, they're not like if I catch one and I catch the other one first and they catch the other one third, that it disrupts anything. They're not a mini series that if you miss one session, you miss the next session. But they do link with each other. They talk to each other in one form or another. So sometimes whatever pressures you may have, if there's a challenge and you end up on the next one, but have missed one, we can always catch up, and I can sometimes do those as well. There's a repeat session, but I can sometimes do those with you on a one-on-one, one-on-two, or whatever the case may be, basis. So preparation 2. Program 1, session 2. We continue to say that there's no promise without preparation. But what I want to do quickly is just to recap what we talked about the last time before we go into some of the little bit of the new structure. And what you'll see is, as I'm recapping, I'm probably going to add a few more new things, because as I do this, I also am learning, but more importantly, I'm also discovering amazingly new things that really touch me, and therefore I really want to pass that on to you, because I think when you start drawing very strong analogies to the conversations that we're having, then those analogies will actually be able to give you a clearer picture of the kind of point that I'm trying to make. So preparation, it's just going to be something I harp on a continuous basis. You reap what you sow. You're gonna, for the rest of your life, gonna remember this and hopefully remember me. 2 key things that we spoke about the last time, or 3 actually. One is that the 2 U's, you, you. You're now going to go around and be with groups of friends and people, and you're going to hear people make a lot of excuses. They're going to make a lot of excuses about others. They're going to make a lot of excuses about their background. They're going to make a lot of excuses about time. And those excuses can be classified as excuses, but they may be legitimate explanations. But the moment an explanation becomes justified, then it becomes an excuse. Because in every decision and in every process and in everything that we do have an alternative. So you reap, you reap. What you sow, what is important. Remember the what. What is it that I'm looking for in life? What is it that I'm searching for in life? What is it that I want to do? The what, because it's the what that you put down that you're going to end up sowing. It's a seed. You are starting at seed level. You're still at seed level. Probably at this stage, you're even looking for the seeds, right? You haven't even started finding the seeds. So it's a seed. And if you remember things about seeds, is that they take time to grow. You can't give up on them. I think all of you should actually go in, and I've done this over the period of winter. I've started planting something for spring. Went and bought seeds and I planted them. And some of you should try doing that, because it'll really give you the sort of essence of how something from nowhere can, in August, or not even in August, actually in October, November, become so beautiful. But it takes that length of time. Everything is a seed. Watch any documentaries about animals, any documentaries about the human. It's a process. All is from seed. So you're also a seed, we talked about, right? And it's actually important that you understand that you know that you are a seed. So here's the thing that I picked up over and above this. And this is very important. And I mentioned this the last time, and I'm going to keep mentioning this because it's going to form an integral part of your DNA of who you are. And it's going to be a major differentiator. And it's a quote that I actually picked up, which says, "Don't judge each day by the harvest you reap or seek, but judge it by the seeds you plant and with whom." Now, I've paraphrased that because I've added a couple of words to it. And I just want to repeat that. Don't judge each day by the harvest you reap. In other words, don't get up tomorrow morning thinking about only the outcomes you're expecting. Judge each day by the seeds you plant. So judge each day, but what are you doing today to be the best version of who you can be through this process of preparation? Sometimes whether you're at school or college or business, you are thinking visually far down the line. And sometimes it can be of trepidation. Sometimes it's the thing that actually can make a difference with regards to your belief muscle. And I'm going to talk about that just now. But if you can do what you can do the best you can today, that day, that moment, that time, judge that, and judge that on a day-by-day basis. And I think that's a powerful thing. And I'm going to ask that we talk about that just now. The second thing is, and this is probably, and I completely overlooked this thing. I mean, when the biblical aspect of the discussion around seed is an amazing one. And the more you look at seed and the construct of seed, the more things come up. And here's a big one. The law of harvest is to reap more than you sow. The law of harvest, what happens at harvest time is you ultimately reap more than what you've sown. In other words, that seed that you have planted does not come up as one thing. If you plant an apple seed, it becomes an apple tree, and that tree bears a lot of apple fruit, right? So the law of harvest is to reap more than you sow. Sowing, sow and act. Let me just get that right. Oh, sow and act. In other words, the act of sowing. Sow a task, sow an act, and you reap a habit. Sow a habit, and you reap a character. Sow a character, and you reap a destiny. Now, just to phrase that, and I'm going to ask everybody just to come on. I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and I'm going to ask everybody to come online just to have a discussion on that. If you can just put your cameras back on, because I think these were really two powerful components that really hit me. Don't judge each day by the harvest you reap or seek, but by the seeds you plant. Sometimes you're too hard on yourself because you're trying to think about the outcome and you're not thinking about the seeds that you're planting on each day. Judge tomorrow by what you do tomorrow. The law of harvest is to reap more than you sow. So we talked about reaping and sowing. The law of harvest is to actually reap more than you sow. Sow and act. In other words, do something small, tiny today that becomes deliberate, this aspect of preparation. And then you begin to reap a habit. How many of you are joggers, runners? Yes, no? Okay, yes. Come online and tell me what it is that you do. Who's a runner? Kilman, you're a runner, right? Okay, so if I asked you the first time, how long have you been running for? You're on mute, don't forget. Approximately.
Say about 10, 12 years.
12 years. Caesar, did you say you're a runner too?
No, I didn't say I was a runner.
You look like a runner. Ladies, any of you runners? No one's running. Come on, ladies. Tobago, you're not a runner. Okay. Nevertheless, that's fine. Let's just use that as an example.
Plays soccer.
Yeah, no, we'll come to the soccer analogies a little later on. But I want to use the running analogy. Hillman, you've been running for 12 years. You run quite consistently, right?
Yes.
How consistently do you run?
I try to do about 4 times a week.
4 times per week, right? So it's now your character. If I took you away and made you not run for 2 weeks, you probably go to palpitations, right? Now, if I ask you the first time, how many kilometers can you run now?
So basically, it depends what I'm training for. If I'm training for track, 800 meters, it's just split between speed work and about 40-minute sessions in the morning. And if I'm training for like a 10K, then I do longer sessions where I run about 2 hours.
Right. The first day you went for a run, do you think you could have run 2 hours?
No, not a chance.
All of you who are non-runners, if I got up and said, go for a 2-hour run tomorrow, you probably keel over within the first 10 seconds, right? But there is a human being, no different to you, same legs, same muscle, same blood group, or same blood, etc., etc. But he's running for 2 hours. But to get there, he had to go through this process. He had to sow and act. So he had to get up and he had to run maybe 1 kilometer, 10 minutes, and then was tired. And then he had to keep going. And when he kept going, he sowed a habit, right? And after that, he sowed a character. Now he can run 10 kilometers like there's no tomorrow. That is the difference in terms of how people are. When you look at the person next door and you think that they're lucky, and I'm going to come to that later on, you forget or you underestimate how much they have been sowing and what it is that they've been sowing. So the question is, what are you sowing? Because that process of sowing is actually the process of preparation. So your whole 1 kilometer, 2 kilometer, 10 kilometers, 5 kilo, that growth was a preparation process. You had to prepare every time to get up, run in the mornings, in the afternoons, etc., etc. You didn't have to sit there and write it down as, okay, this is what I'm going to do, and not go out and do it. Because that would be great in planning, but it's terrible in terms of execution. So what character do you want to be from now? What character do you want to have from now? When we look at some of what's going on in our country from leadership and political level, we ask ourselves the question, but how can somebody do that? Well, if you want to know how they did that, go back to what they sowed and how they sowed that element of their act and how that act actually became a habit, and from a habit, it became a character, and from a character, it became part of their destiny. That's what happens. So I just wanted to explain that to you guys, because when we talk about preparation, there's some powerful things that are taking place. And this is what I'm going to get to as we go along. Fantastic. Let me go back to sharing. So everybody remembers this slide. And this was really the slide of knowing thyself. The fact that you are uniquely created in this world. And it's important for you to know what you were created for. You need to know your purpose, and you need to know your passion. And that the process of your creation is so unique and so amazing. It boggles the mind for us to begin to wonder, why would I be brought in with such an immaculate process and yet believe that I'm destined not to succeed? And that's the thing that I want you to keep in your minds all the time. Every day when you breathe, every day when you stop and pause and understand that there's blood circulating, every day when you stop and pause and say, my heart is beating, I want you to understand that that creative process is you, and it's you uniquely. And it is vital that you understand what you were brought in here for, and it can't be that you were brought in here to fail. Now, all of you know Pythagoras, and I want you to put your mics on and all say yes, because parents are going to ask for their money back if they don't. You all know Pythagoras?
Yes.
Right, good to hear.
Yes.
Good. Now, Pythagoras.
We failed that at school.
We all know about his theory, Pythagoras' theory. What was that, Kilman? I know that was you. I didn't even see you.
I was saying I failed that thing at school.
Yeah. We all did. Don't worry, you're not alone. But let me tell you what he did say. The Pythagoras' theory, let me tell you what I did say, and you're not going to fail. He said here, and there are two quotes from two great philosophers, and he was a great philosopher. For man or woman to know thyself, then you shall know the universe, and you shall know God. For man or woman, and there they used man to define woman or man, to know thyself, then you shall know the universe, and you shall know God. And this is coming from the guy who came up with some theorem that all of us, not many of us really like, right? But that is actually, I think, a very powerful statement. That in order for you to get closer to the universal powers that exist, you need to know yourself. I'm going to stress this thing very heavily because preparation, as I said, is essential. Socrates, I'm sure most of you have heard of Socrates, said, and these are 18th century philosophers, said this, and this took me by surprise when I looked it up. He said, to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. Now, we ask the question, how do we get wise? Well, he's just answered it. To get wise is not to read as many textbooks as you can, because that gives you knowledge. Knowledge does not give you understanding, because we know knowledge isn't understanding. What gives you understanding? For you to know thyself. To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. And I tend to think that's quite a powerful statement. Okay, here we go again with technology glitches. Let me just go back in here. Okay, let's go here. I'm running these technology glitches now. Let's go 1 second. Right. Okay. So we're here. And then obviously the last construct of this is that in order for you to know thyself, in order for you to prepare, you're just going to have to put time aside. as you prepare for what you're supposed to be, from this point on, as you're growing from a seed to where you're going to become. Now, here's something that I really didn't chat to you about, and maybe one or two of you have heard this. Maybe, Lake and Lee, you might have heard this because I spoke to you a little bit earlier on. We talked about the function of the brain, and we ran a video, and I'm going to play another video in a minute. But what I want you to understand is that there are certain things that take place in the brain. And we know one of the most important things that happens in preparation is that when we sit down and focus on something, when we are preparing for something, sitting down, putting time aside and saying, this is what I really want to put my mind to in terms of what I'm going to prepare for. There are certain levels of focus that create levels of elation. Now, if I go back to Kilman probably nod his head here, or Kilman, you can probably clap or send a message in chat and tell me if I'm wrong. There's a moment when you're running where your hormones get so strong that you get a feeling of elation, almost invincibility. That's at the heightened levels of focus. And whether that's focus in terms of concentrating on what you're running, on running or working, et cetera, et cetera. And it's an important ingredient, because I did say to you earlier on that that good sensational feeling of elation is actually the constructs of belief. So in other words, every time you are doing something that raises that level of elevation, of elation, you're raising your level of belief. You will probably find that people who are not motivated, people who are not inspired, tend to be quite drabby. And yet people who are constantly walking on their toes, people who are energetic, tend to be quite, motivated and forward moving. Well, I'm not going to get into the function of the brain and what it actually excretes in that time. But all you need to know is that that good sensation feeling is a feeling that drives confidence. Confidence is a heightened sense of belief. Now, the more you do that, the more you prepare, the more you sit down and say, this is what I'm planning to do, or this is what I'm thinking of doing and how I'm going to do it, the more you're training that sensational feeling, and the more you're training belief. And belief, ladies and gents, is a muscle. Belief is a muscle. It needs to be trained. And the measure of faith, or the measure of belief, is just the quantum that is put into it. So if you go back to look at some of the icons that you follow, whether they may be celebrities, whether they may be sporting artists, what tends to draw us to those people is, yes, some of the activities that they're taking place. What tends to draw people to Tiger Woods, for example? What tends to draw people to Ronaldo, for example? Yes, it's the sport, and it's the football, and it's the etc. What tends to draw people to Oprah Winfrey? What tended to draw people to Mandela? Yes, it's because they are president, and that the fact that they are on TV. But you're drawn by the level of confidence that they exude, the level of expression that they're able to give to whatever it is that they need to do. So the point I'm making here is that the more you actually sit down to think about what it is that who you are, to think about what it is that you want to do, the more you're doing something within your mind that's actually quite phenomenal. And I'll show you that in a minute. People who say, I don't believe in something, it tends to mean that they're not focusing on it, not preparing for anything, and therefore not getting that good sensational feeling. When you feel drab, you're not getting a good sensational feeling. But I'm sure all of you have gone through that phase where you've had an idea or a thought, and it's just created that kind of excitement that you need within yourself. So, as I said, guided by the most sophisticated computer, you need to be spending time having that conversation with yourself. And remember, we talked about two things. We talked about imagination, that your brain has no concept of reality. Actually, in terms of what athletes do in terms of visualizing, you go to any athlete, they'll tell you that they're visualizing the outcome of something before it's actually taken place. So they're manifesting their own results. In other words, they're creating their own reality. You know, there are people who say about this COVID situation that not everybody's on the same boat, but not everybody is experiencing the same experience in the boat. And that's vital, because some people look at it from one perspective and other people look at it from another perspective. The other thing, of course, is that you have 70,000 thoughts a day. Now, I'm no clinician, but if you have 70,000 thoughts a day and your brain has got no construct between reality and imagination, and how are you going to know yourself if you don't set aside time in order to understand who you are? With earphones on, with YouTube going, with Facebook here and all that sort of thing, that's not going to be the place where you find it. So you're going to have to find time to know who you are and what it is that you're preparing for. Let me play this quickly.
So how do we learn? And
Uncle Vic, we can't see the video.
More easily than others. So as I was mentioned, I'm Dr. Laura Boyd,
Uncle Vic,
brain researcher
Yes?
here
sorry,
at British
we can't see
Columbia.
the
These are the
presentation.
questions that fascinate me.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, is it a presentation?
No, it's a video. Can you see it?
No,
We can't
no,
see
I can't
it.
see it.
Oh, you can't see it? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Let me come out of there. Let me try again. Oh, that's because I wasn't sharing. That's interesting. Okay, let's go here. Can you see it now?
Yeah, it's all good.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So how do we learn? And why do some of us learn things more easily than others? So as I was mentioned, I'm Dr. Laura Boyd. I'm a brain researcher here at the University of British Columbia. And these are the questions that fascinate me. So brain research is one of the great frontiers in the understanding of human physiology, and also in the consideration of what makes us who we are. It's an amazing time to be a brain researcher, and I would argue to you that I have the most interesting job in the world. What we know about the brain is changing at a breathtaking pace. And much of what we thought we knew and understood about the brain turns out to be not true or incomplete. Now, some of these misconceptions are more obvious than others. For example, we used to think that after childhood, the brain really could not change. And it turns out that nothing could be farther from the truth. Another misconception about the brain is that you only use parts of it at any given time and it's silent when you do nothing. Well, this is also untrue. It turns out that even when you're at rest and thinking of nothing, your brain is highly active. So it's been advances in technology such as MRI has allowed us to make these and many other important discoveries. And perhaps the most exciting, the most interesting and transformative of these discoveries is that every time you learn a new fact or skill, you change your brain. It's something we call neuroplasticity. So as little as 25 years ago, we thought that after about puberty, the only changes that took place in the brain were negative. The loss of brain cells with aging, the result of damage like a stroke. And then studies began to show remarkable amounts of reorganization in the adult brain. And the ensuing research has shown us that all of our behaviors change our brain, that these changes are not limited by age. It's good news, right? And in fact, they're taking place all the time. And very importantly, brain reorganization helps to support recovery after you damage your brain. The key to each of these changes is neuroplasticity. So what does it look like? So your brain can change in three very basic ways to support learning. And the first is chemical. So your brain actually functions by transferring chemical signals between brain cells, what we call neurons, and these trigger a series of actions and reactions. So to support learning, your brain can increase the amount or the concentrations of these chemical signaling that's taking place between neurons. Now, because this kind of change can happen very rapidly, this supports short-term memory or the short-term improvement in the performance of a motor skill.
Right. So if we could just put our cameras on, because I just want to ask a couple of questions here, really around that. We had a discussion the last time about the brain, and the reason why I keep emphasizing this is because I want you to understand how powerful that thing you have in your head is, and how much it's sitting there waiting for you to call on it to create what it is that you want to be creating into the future. Anyone pick up anything new, additional in terms of the brain that fascinated them on this one? There's another short video I'll play. It's about 2.5 minutes long after this. Anyone? Anything? Are we all shy? Well, let me kick off. Every time you learn a fact or a skill, the brain changes structure to suit and fit what it is that you're learning. Think about that and how powerful that is when it comes to you starting to think about what it is that you're preparing for. All our behavior changes the structure of our brain. And that in short term, it ignites certain chemical reactions that trigger actions and reactions to the brain. So, meaning that the fact that you're beginning to try and figure out who you are, the fact that you're spending time to figure out who you are, the fact that you're trying to get to know yourself, the fact that you're preparing for what it is that you're preparing, all those things are not wasted in terms of how your physiology works. They play an intricate function in terms of how it is that you become what you're going to become when you become it. It's essential that you think about that. Just take a few thought processes as I go to the second video.
So how do we learn?
Sorry, wrong one. Let's try that again.
The second way that the brain can change to support learning is by.
Okay.
And why do some of us learn things more easily than others? So as I was mentioned, I'm Dr. Laura Boyd. I'm a brain researcher here at the University of British Columbia. And these are the questions that fascinate me.
Sorry, I'm not sure what's happening here, but it seems to be playing the same one over and over again. But never mind, we'll come back to that. I'm not sure. Let's try one more time. One more time. Technology, let's do it one more time.
The second way that the brain can change to support learning is by altering its structure. So during learning, the brain can change the connections between neurons. Now here, the physical structure of the brain is actually changing, so this takes a bit more time. These types of changes are related to long-term memory, the long-term improvement.
Sorry, we still can't see the video.
Now, these processes, they interact, and let me give you.
Yeah, I think you stopped sharing your screen, I think.
These technological glitches are insistent on finding their way. For some reason, when I show my screen, okay, let's share that. Can you see it now?
Yeah, that's all good.
Okay. Third time lucky. Let's hope it's going to play the right video though.
Second way that the brain can change to support learning is by.
Okay, let's leave it. It clearly doesn't want to do that. But let me just go through it with you because I think it's quite important to just run the second video with you in terms of the importance of it. So there were a couple of things that came out in this that were quite powerful. When you engage your mind and when you engage your brain, they have given two classical examples, and research has been done to show what happens to you physiologically. So one of the big ones is that they found is that people who are blind, who read Braille, what the brain then eventually starts doing is working with the physiology of your mind to start enlarging the hand that you use Braille for. So what they found was that people who read Braille, the hand that they used to read Braille was unusually larger than the average hand. That's a big one. The second thing that they found was that London taxi drivers, if you all know London taxi drivers, what they needed to do before was they actually became taxi drivers, is that they needed to actually sit a test. And that was the map of London. They needed to literally recite and recall the map of London. And what that showed is that there was a certain part of their brain that enlarged as a result of actually being able to carry out that point. And the last point that she makes, which is actually the point that I wanted her to stress, is that as you use your brain region, that particular region that you're using for whatever task or whatever skill or whatever fact that you're actually putting into place becomes more excitable. And that element of excitability is the thing that I was referring to earlier on that creates elation, that good sense feeling, that ability to then start training your mind. So it is essential that as you go through this process of, really trying to understand what it is that you're doing around preparation, that you don't see it as a wasted effort, that you don't see it as something that actually is not going to add any value to you. Because at the end of it, there's a physiological change that's taking place that is from a brain perspective. And we all understand that there's a physical change that takes place, which is the example that I was giving you earlier on with regards to what's going on with Hillman when he starts running. So let me get into this phase, which I think is pretty interesting for me. A lot of people, and I'm sure you've heard this before, that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. But what is that? What exactly does this mean? What this means is that the people that are believed to be lucky have actually been physiologically, through some process of their own mental manifestation, creating the outcome that they were looking for. So the act of luck is not pure in terms of luck. It's actually the act of what somebody has been doing behind the scenes when they were sowing the seed that they were sowing. The other thing is that you will never come across a successful person who's not been prepared. So if you want to be successful, preparation is essential for that process to move along. The best preparation for tomorrow is doing your best today. Now, we go back to the Socrates statement that I gave earlier on, or the Pythagoras as well. The man that knows thyself shall know the universe and God, and to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. So this process of trying to make sure that you're not overstepping your next day, you can't manage your next days. This is something I'm going to end off just now. And I want, if I could just get this as much into your DNA as possible. If you continue to worry about 5 days down, 6 months down, and some of you are writing exams at in October, if that worry resides with you in July, you're not doing yourself the service you need to be doing yourself in order to be preparing for that. Excellence without effort is as futile as progress without preparation. And I told you earlier on that this word excellence is very important because it sits in the fabric of leadership. So when you put effort, you get excellence. But you have to prepare to get progress. That's basically what this is saying. Confidence is preparation. Everything else is beyond your control. Again, that's a repetition of what I've just said now. All you can do is prepare for now. For you to experience the now, for you to experience the moment, for the right now. If you can find more time to be in the present and in the now, and not in the, oh, what's going to happen to me in 6 months' time or 12 months' time, then you will find that that impact on your physiology, including your brain, the structure of the brain, the chemicals that the brain releases, are going to work in your favor. It is important to know that there is no manifestation without prior preparation. By the way, these are not my quotes. These are things that I've picked up here and there. So these are what people have been talking about in the context of preparation. And confidence is simply being prepared to take action. If I said to Kilman now, Kilman, let's go for a 5-kilometer jog, you probably look at me and say, Vic, I can do that with my eyes closed, you know, with one leg hopping. But that's because he's confident, because he's prepared, because he's been doing it for the length of time that he's been doing it for. So why don't we prepare? If we know all this, why don't we prepare? Well, the reason why we don't prepare, one of the big reasons why we don't prepare, is because we've got what we call weapons of mass distraction. I'm sure you can all see those, right? You guys have Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, you name it, Instagram, etc., etc., etc. Nothing wrong with them, right? But you have to quantify those against what it is that you are preparing for. They can be used for your preparation process, but they can't be used to distract you from the direction that you're going. And by the way, I'm not advocating that you can't have leisure time and be able to watch the odd movie and be able to watch the odd this, etc., etc. What I am saying is that, are you setting time aside to prepare versus what else are you doing with the rest of your time? The other thing is, well, I don't prepare because I don't know how to, right? And we'll go through that. That's when we start talking about choices, dreaming the plan and planning the dream. And the other big one is time. I don't have time. Folks, anything about time is about setting time aside. When we talk about time management and time planning into the future, you're going to begin to see that there is no way that you can have a planning process that doesn't include time. So, but there are methodologies in which you can actually plan certain things to make sure that you actually execute against those things. So these tend to be the three things why people don't prepare. They don't know, they don't have the time, and obviously they're quite seriously distracted. So I just really want to emphasize the need that, you know, what you're going to find is that athletes find preparation to be everything. The execution is when they go and play, but every athlete has to prepare. And I want you to get that kind of analogy in your mind. I want you to ask yourself the question, how am I preparing for what it is that I want to be executing? If I want to be a doctor, if I want to be a lawyer, if I want to be a businessman, it's one thing to be involved in the playing, but then there has to be a time where you set aside to say, well, this is my preparation and practice for what it is that I'm going to go and play. So that's the thing that I want you to keep in mind. The big one, as you all know, for all of you that are studying, is that for matric, your preparation time is going to take longer than the execution time. Now, if you're going to spend the entire process, and you've got another 4 or 5 months, I can't remember how many it is, but if you're going to spend the rest of this time, and those of you who are writing your final year exams, worrying about the end result without going through the process that you're going through now, in other words, each seed, each day, then understand the impact that has on your physiology, on your brain, and who you are. We've talked about the impact on certain things on the brain. So when you worry, the brain has got no concept between reality and imagination. If it gets feedback from you to say, hey, we must worry, guess what the brain does? It goes into panic mode. And hence, this is why we're having high levels of anxiety, we're having high levels of depression, is because generally what's happening is that people are seeing so far down the line of things that they can't manage and that they can't control. It is a process of letting go. You have to have that process of letting go. So just to end off before the thank you slide, preparing enables you to let go. It is a letting go process of submitting. In your process of preparation, you know, if you take an athlete, or if you even take in terms of what I've done, right, today, there's certain things that I can control, and there's certain things that I can't control. I can't control if technology goes up and down. I can't control if ESCOM goes off. All I can do is do the best that I can do right now. And that's exactly how you have to see it. And then on top of that is, all right, now that things have gone wonky, if in your life or in your exam or in your test or in your whatever it is, the next process after that is, how do I recover from that and what do I learn from that? That is the exact process. By the way, nobody's going to ask you when you are 80 years old for your matric result. When you're about to leave this planet to go to the next dimension, nobody's going to ask you about your degree. What they are going to ask you is, on this planet, what did you learn? How did you learn it? And how did you pass it on? That's going to be engraved on your tombstone. I've been to lots of grave sites, and I'm sure you have. I've never seen a matric result on a grave site. I've never seen a qualification on a result. What I have seen are inscriptions that describe the person. And it's actually interesting, whenever the world allows us to go to a funeral again, is to read some of those inscriptions, because they're actually a depiction of who you have been in your life. So the question is, from the seed to now, who are you? Who are you going to be? You can't control the outcome. You can't. You can only respond to it. The measure of life is how you're going to respond to the outcome. It's not going to be how you actually find that outcome. That outcome is there. You know, it's always going to be there. Tomorrow there'll be a new outcome. It's how you respond to it. And that's, if I can leave that with you from that preparation process of understanding that if I can just get down and do what I can do best for what I can do in terms of the outcomes that I'm looking for, your physiological structures, your brain structures, not to mention the universal structures, will come and definitely support you. Write down, because writing down creates focus. Focus creates a feeling good sensation. Feeling good creates belief, and belief is what drives things forward. It's that connection between you and this amazing planet that we live on, this amazing earth that we live on, with all these 7 billion people that are here with us. So that is the foundation, the starting ground, for you to understand why preparation is so important, why setting time aside is so important, and for you to understand that in that process of preparation, get to know who you are. Have quiet time, close time. Understand one of the things that you're trying to get ready for. Find out who you are. What do you love? What are you passionate about? What do you want to change? Who do you want to become? Give yourself that space. And the moment you start doing that, you will know thyself. And when you know thyself, well, you've heard it from the great philosophers. You will know the universe and you will know God. When you know yourself, you will find wisdom. And wisdom is the thing that will guide you to the direction that you need to go.